All right, the race is done and dusted. I guess that was my 10th Ironman Texas, and not my fastest one. Definitely needed my fastest one to be relevant on the day, but it wasn't that far off from metric-wise from what I've done on that course in the past. The 2018 race was my fastest on that course on the day, and the weather conditions were much faster. I swam the exact same and I biked the exact same. I just ran better. But even the 6-minute difference in the run would have only moved me up a couple of spots. So things are getting a lot faster. There's no doubt about that. If you watch my pre-race video, I talked about how important the swim was going to be, and got a lot of comments in the comment section about how I shouldn't put too much pressure on myself, or that it wasn't that important. And it turned out it was pretty much exactly what I expected it to be. If I didn't catch the back end of that front pack, the best I was gonna do was be able to fight for 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th. I would have had no shot at being at the pointy end. And yeah, with 25, 26 guys coming out of the water all together in a big group, and then me only 3 minutes down, which is, it was a good swim for missing the group, and having just a small little group of us. We held up pretty well, and I was fairly happy coming out only 3 minutes down from the leaders. I wasn't very happy that there was that many people up front, but that's good. That's the new normal in big races like that. Kona last year was very similar, maybe not quite that big of a group, but every 4 years the swim just gets that much faster, or that many more people up in front. I think with the Olympic cycle, once that ends, people kind of shuffle into 70.3s, and then the 70.3s kind of shuffle up into the Pro Series now. So that's pretty much to be expected. I really expect the swim to be faster this year than it was last year, because an Olympic cycle just ended. Coming out of the water, I knew I had a lot of work to do to have a shot, and I kind of went for broke, and I broke. It was an opportunity to have Cam and Leon behind me, a little bit behind me. I got a gap on them about halfway through the swim. They were in the group, and then I was able to come out a little bit in front of them by the end, and that allowed me to get settled before the storm that they were going to create when they came by me, which is an ideal situation. They were riding hard. I knew they were riding hard. I had no idea that Cam was going out was going to put out the day that he eventually did. But as soon as he and Leon passed me, the reaction was to go with them, and hopefully I get to the back of the group with them. And I committed to doing that if I could, and was riding really hard for me for the first 2+ hours. We got to the first out and back on the Hardy, and they attacked. I was on the back of the group of the group. I was zero help to them at all. I was hanging on for dear life the entire time, riding well above what I would have preferred to be riding. And they got to the U-turn, and I saw them attack out of the turn, and that was even before I got in there, and I knew I was going to be up against the ropes at that point. I put in a 5-minute plus surge above threshold after riding above 70.3 watts all the way to that point, and ended up not being able to get back on the train, I guess. And so I think Cam, Leon, and Ben Hamilton got away, and then there was a couple guys that we just kind of one by one splintered off, and I think I was the 5th person left at the end of it, but fell off. And then we were kind of able to keep riding well and make a smaller group on the rest of the tailwind section. I still wasn't able to be any help to the group. I was still trying to recover from that effort. And so when we turned back into the headwind section, I was, popped off the back about half of it, halfway through that section, and then was in no man's land the rest of the time. And a little bit was a tactical error on my fault, or on my part. I knew I wasn't going to be able to make the pass of the whole group if I had to. So I was making sure I stayed back a little bit too far probably. I was riding too safe, because if my light turned red for a second, there was zero chance I was going to be able to go all the way to the front, and there was no space in the gaps. And so I was constantly yo-yoing off and then having to bridge forward, and yo-yoing off and having to bridge forward. And it was just like, kind of a bullfight, death by 1,000 little cuts or little daggers. And eventually, it just caught up with me. Since I was riding, well above where I wanted to be, there was no chance I was going to be able to go from the back to the front if I got into the draft zone. So I was probably being way too careful with making sure I kept the light orange and never blue, because I would have had to take the drafting penalty if I got into red, and I just couldn't have completed a pass. So I was hanging out in the back end of the zone, and that made it so I would get popped off and had to surge forward, and get popped off and had to surge forward. And every time one of those surges happens, it takes a toll on you. And by the time I kind of had lost the group and couldn't get back on, I was really struggling to hold any sort of respectable power. Didn't help that I had launched some nutrition, and so didn't have as many calories as I wanted either. I think I triaged that okay and got what I needed to, but there were definitely some low points because I had to grab gels from the aid stations rather than just having kind of a steady blood sugar level. I was able to get things back to where I needed to on the run, but there was definitely some low points out there, and the low points came at bad times into the headwind section. So at well past the halfway point, I was only 4 minutes down from the front, and then I ended up losing almost 10 minutes between the last half of the second lap and the finish of the bike. So the damage was done on the back half. I was definitely in a hurt locker for a little bit. The last half hour, once I got a couple more gels from the aid stations and caught back up, I was okay, but it was just a couple of tough spots that both mentally and physically were tough to get through. But we got there and got off the bike, and wasn't thrilled with hearing how far down I was to the lead, but I thought there was a chance that I could run into the top 10 and at least pay for my trip. And so I set out to try to run kind of like I've always been doing lately, and trying to be in that low 234, 235, which I know I'm capable of running. I've done that multiple times, and even though it was hot, my heart rate was staying in control. I did a good job on the fluid side of things, especially despite the little calorie issues that I had. And I was running fine, and then it just the cramps started to slowly set in by the third loop. So at the start of the third loop, I was on pace for a 236, and was dropped from below right around 6 flat at that point to 630s to 640s by the end. And fortunately, I came in 11th, one spot out of the final paycheck, which is always a little bit of a bummer. I was able to cut a lot of time into the gap to get up to 10th, but not finish the job. When you have some dull moments or some tough moments on the bike that cost you a lot of time, you're putting your back up against the wall, and I just wasn't able to overcome that in the strong field that we had. So that's racing. It wasn't my best day, but it also wasn't a terrible day. It's pretty crazy to look back at all the different times. Obviously, every weather day and every wind day in Texas is very different, and that makes a big difference. But in 2018, when everybody went really fast there, no one was close to Christian's time. So it was just, the game's changed. It's a different world, and it just shows how impressive that performance was in those conditions for the podium guys up front. So you got to just tip your hat off to them. And look, I know what I have to do in order to be able to be successful in races that are that big, that deep, and talented. I either have to catch the back of the front group, or I have to be able to bike with the cams and be able to use that to bridge up. And I know that's what has to happen. It's just whether or not I can make that happen with the time available I have this season to be successful in these big Pro Series races or not. That's what's up ahead of me. Speaking of ahead of me, I've got St. George in just 2 weeks from race day to race day, which is always a bit of a gamble, but this one is a driving distance one. Ashley has to be out there for work anyways, so it makes sense to still go and put my best foot forward and see if I can get a good 70.3 score on the board. When a guy goes off like Christian did, it kind of hurts everybody else in the field, because so many of the points just get taken away because he was so outstanding on the day. When you've got guys like him on the field that are capable of doing that on any given day, that's always a risk. And so hopefully we can be a little bit closer to the leader and finish in the money here in St. George. Again, it's going to be an important swim. I've been in the front group at that swim specifically in the past, and gotten a lot better with that type of ride as well the last couple of years. So I'm excited to go out and give that one another go. The training in St. George is actually quite fun, quite enjoyable. So I'm looking forward to getting out there, getting in the open water a few times, getting used to that cold water. And I'm heading out way early compared to what I normally would for a 70.3. So I take off Monday of race week, and we'll just be out there for the week, and then we'll circle around and check in after the race. So we'll see you then.